Hi, I'm Ian Mean, Content Director for Local World newspapers in this region, and tonight I'm talking to Air Vice Marshal Julian Young. This is part of the Distinguished Address series being organised by the University of the West of England and sponsored by the Bristol Post. Julian Young, tell us something about your job, because we're sitting in UWE here and you're pretty much next door, aren't you, in Abbey Wood, which is the main forces procurement centre for the UK.
Absolutely. So the Defence Equipment and Support Organisation, D&S as we call it, sits here alongside UWE, an office complex on the Filton Ring Road, and our responsibility for the entirety of MOD is to procure kit and services in support of the armed forces and the front line, now and into the future, here in peacetime and indeed on operations.
Yeah. Now you've got something like 9,000 people working there, is that right?
About 9,000 people on the floor plate here at Abbey Wood, 16 and a bit thousand across the entirety of the organisation, and they are scattered across various parts of the United Kingdom, again in support of the front line.
And your team are responsible for ordering something literally from boots to nuclear submarines. Is that too simplified a way of putting it?
I would say that's a very good way of describing it, and everything in between. So it's a very complex organisation. What that means is that we have a large number of engineers, a large number of project managers who are incredibly specialised in their own skills, with great experience of bringing in very large projects, sometimes over a number of years, bringing into service equipment that may last in the front line for 20, 30, perhaps 50 years or more.
So how far ahead, Julie, are you ordering things? 5 years? Is that a project, for instance, of a big engineering nature? Would it take that long to come to fruition?
It would take sometimes up to 20 years. Typhoon aircraft, which came into service about 8 or 9 years ago from memory, had been on the drawing board, as it were, for some 20 years. And can take that long, as it were, to all of the complexities, recognising that many of the very larger projects are actually multinational and thus are meeting the requirements of a great number of nations.
And how do you cope with these huge overruns that we hear about?
On a day today, like today, so we have budget day today, so everyone is worried about the pounds in their pocket. It's absolutely right that organisations like ours in the public sector come under scrutiny from organisations such as the National Audit Office and the Public Accounts Committee, the House of Commons Defence Committee. All of them are scrutinising what it is we do. Indeed, when I reflect back, there are some things which haven't gone all as well as they might for a number of years, very complex programmes, but nonetheless the latest NAO audit and major project review, which they undertook only last calendar month, was much more positive about what we're doing. So I think that we are on track. I think we are making improvements in the way that we go about our forecasting of money, and in fact delivering what the front line want, which is to cost, time and performance.
But if you were a chief executive of a private company, Julie, wouldn't you be out on your ear? Because a lot of these figures are amazing, aren't they? They're so big. People say, how could that happen? How can you be so far over budget?
Well, I'm not quite sure it's fair to compare what goes on in private industry with indeed what goes on within our world, in as far as many of the projects that we're involved in are multi-billion pound projects, as I say, over 10 and 20 years. The complexity of what we deliver far surpasses much of what else goes on in the UK sector. And indeed, some of the companies that you might say, well, what about the CEO of this particular company? Many of those are actually our suppliers.
Yeah.
And so I think that we are increasingly working together as an overall team defence, as it were, to deliver, again, what the front line wants.
Yeah, so team defence is a good way of putting it, but are you very much controlled by the politicians?
Any government department is controlled by the politicians. I think that's what we elect them for. So of course we are here to meet the needs of the government, but that's very clearly stated in the defence policy. Our leader in the Defence Department is the Secretary of State, a very powerful person who, of course, drives government policy, but that's through defence policy for the good of the United Kingdom. So any member of the public sector is held account, quite rightly, by the government, and in fact is doing what the government bids.
Now, lots of criticism in the past, particularly in Afghanistan, over equipment, isn't there? A lot of it sometimes from relatives of families who've lost people in the field, in the theatre. How do you react to that? Because lots of questions about boots. We talked about boots to nuclear submarines. You don't go out of your way to provide cheap equipment, cheap boots. You don't. That doesn't enter your head, presumably.
We strive for value for money, but that certainly does not mean cheap products at the expense of quality. I myself was in Afghanistan 20 months ago, and indeed the armful of clothing and boots and various paraphernalia that I walked away from clothing stores to support me on my week in theatre was probably the most extensive range of equipment that I'd ever had to use. It did wonder where it was going to all fit in the wardrobe. So when we look back, I still have it because I got it out on charge, and at some point I may need it again. It's worn, so I don't know if you want some socks that I've worn in Afghanistan to go back into stores. But indeed, ultimately, when I don't need it anymore, then it will be returned back to stores. But if we look back at all of the equipment that we provide, we can't always have the right equipment at the right time, but certainly what we do and actually take great pride in is responding to the frontline requirements as quickly as we can with, as I said earlier, quality products in support of our troops, our armed forces, remembering that some of us sitting in the Defence Equipment and Support Organisation are military. And the rest are very highly committed civil servants who again are there to deliver and what is needed.
Over the period of Afghanistan, Julian, what's been the single biggest improvement factor in terms of the equipment you've supplied?
The biggest single factor, I'm not sure.
Or area?
Yeah, area, okay.
I mean, for instance, Land Rovers ran a great criticism. They've now obviously improved hugely.
Yeah, certainly. I think perhaps protection to our own armed forces, be that in terms of armoured vehicles, lightly armoured vehicles, and in fact the clothing, coming back to boots, but the clothing that our troops are wearing in theatre, which is absolutely second to none in terms of the quality and the protection that is being offered. Come what may, clearly people are injured, people do die in theatre, and those are all tragic losses. But we have gone to great lengths over the last few years in offering greater levels of protection to our troops so that they can perform the operations they must to provide a safer and freer Afghanistan.
Now, you've been over there quite recently. A lot of us have seen TV pictures of this these enormous convoys of hardware coming out of Afghanistan. What's going to happen to all that, Julian? What's going to happen to all these vehicles that are coming back?
All of the vehicles and all of the equipment that's coming back is going to be conditioned.
Right.
The strategic decisions were made as to what needs to be retained, recognising that much of it was tailored very specifically to the Afghan theatre. And let's hope that we don't have to go back too soon. In fact, I am certain we won't. And so all of that kit that's coming back will be firstly checked for its serviceability against a strategic requirement as to what is it that we're going to accept back into core requirement, recognising that the army is in fact getting smaller, and indeed we're back onto contingent operations. So who knows where that next operation may flare.
Will some of that be sold? Is it like warships sold to a foreign country?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. It's not my part of ship, as it were.
No.
But I would imagine that some of it will be sold and others will be refurbished and put back on the stocks for the next time we need something of that particular type.
Yeah. Now, you're an engineer. We're sitting here in Newey. set out on your career path because you were a sponsored student, weren't you, to
I was.
City University in London. And we're in the middle of National Science and Engineering Week. Can you tell us how important it is to have the relationship between a university like UWE here and big business, basically?
The links that we have between all academia and engineering organisations like my own, as it were, are crucial. I have previously been the head of the engineering branch in the Royal Air Force. So if I liken that activity, which is very similar to the type of skills that we require in both military and civil service people within this organisation, we go out of our way to sponsor an awful lot of people through university, through bursary schemes. We recruit a lot of graduate engineers, and we also let a huge number of apprenticeships.
Yeah.
So in the organisation that I work now, the DNS, we recruited 125 graduates, they were all engineers, in the last, this academic year. Next year we'll be aiming to recruit 130. Last year we recruited 67 apprentices, and this year our target is 85.
Yeah.
So we have very strong links with the universities and also with the local Bristol area, and indeed we are a good employer. We care about the knowledge and expertise of our people, so it's not only a case of recruiting high quality individuals, but we are prepared to invest in their professional development, whether that's through further university courses or any form of academic training and experience, to ensure that we get the right people delivering the projects that we have, which, as we've talked about earlier, are hugely complicated and deserve the best people.
And what's your view about university and the world of work? Lots and lots of people in business are very critical, aren't they, of the people who come out of university. Are they actually prepared for the world of work? What's your view on that?
Well, I can give my own personal experience. I think the number of the youngsters that we're getting out of university these days are high quality. I was up at Loughborough University only last Thursday visiting students that the MOD has sponsored through the Defence Technical Undergraduate Scheme, and the individuals that I saw there were keen, enthusiastic, eager to actually get through their studies and out the other side. They were doing a large amount of adventurous training during their studies, cramming that in, a lot of leadership and military type activity, and we get some excellent quality individuals out of that product. I would say that, are they as good as we were in the old days? I would say they are better. They are different, because we recruit people that reflect the society in which we live now. And when I joined 33 years ago, society was different. I think the people that we get now are far more aware of what's going on about them, far more travelled, far more wise around the world, more street wise, and actually are prepared to question, and once they get the answer, they will see delivery through.
Yeah, we just had a budget today, and you know, one of the things that I think government needs to look at is the whole situation of young people. We still have a huge amount of young people unemployed, don't we? What is your view of the skills debate in young people? Where do you stand on skills in young people?
I think, you know, if I were to reflect back on the drive to encourage people to university, I think that's the right thing. But also at the same time, I think that there is a far stronger place in society in the UK for further training and for apprenticeships, where in fact the academic rigour is actually equalled with work experience directly related to the jobs that they will find at the end. So I'm a big fan of apprenticeships, and I think that the more that we support those, the better. We in DNS are hugely proud that we have had a thriving apprenticeship scheme for the last 10 years, with indeed, as I described earlier, growing numbers as we're going through that. On a personal basis, I'm a governor at the City of Bath College, where again I am very proud to be part of what that college is doing, as is the academic area across the entire southwest. I think it's very focused on providing people that are ready for work.
And how do you think, in your sector, National Science and Engineering Week, how do you think, Julian, this Bristol area is placed? You've got so much going for it, isn't it? Big companies like Airbus, lots of research going on. Are we very much in the forefront of that type of
I think if,
project?
from a regional perspective, if we could tie together all of the industry that we have here, it's BAS, it's Rolls-Royce, it's EADS, it's Airbus, it's Atkins, it's MBDA, all from a engineering and partly defence basis, along with all of the academic institutes that exist in this area. And again, with the industry, with a new nuclear power station just about to be built on our doorstep, I think there is a great opportunity for a very strong and vibrant engineering community to be developed here.
Could you develop some sort of hub for engineering? Is there any point in doing something like that?
Could you describe hub?
A hub in involvement of companies and academia together, particularly looking at engineering.
Okay, I think that those arrangements pretty much already exist. As far as the Bristol area is hugely competitive for engineers. So whilst we bring in graduate engineers and we are constantly on the lookout for high quality engineers, competition is tough. And indeed, I think all of those organisations, like our own, are undertaking STEM activity, trying to promote science, technology, engineering and maths in the local schools to make sure that the next generation of youngsters will look and see engineering as a viable career opportunity.
What about UWE? We hear you're about to talk to, in a debate, to people here at UWE. How are they rated in your view?
We have a number of undergraduates here, which we sponsor on a part-time basis. So a lot of our apprenticeships that we offer, around half of those people within the first 2 years of actually finishing the apprenticeship and working in our organisation actually find their way into UWE on part-time engineering degree courses. So we have a good relationship with UWE, our next door neighbour, and are very pleased with what we get out at the end in terms of the quality of output.
Good, thank you.
You're most welcome.